And salutations. I'm here with my two sidekicks, Samson and little girl. Twigs herself. If you hear some traffic noises, that is because I have the window open. If you're new here, welcome. This is kind of how we do things, for right now anyways. Hoping to just go over some of this information that I come across while you guys listen, get ready for work, drive to work, start your job, have your coffee, whatever. So I will sit here and have my orange juice and or Gatorade with you guys as I go over a couple of things, and I want to jump right into it as far as that goes. The disclaimers are in the description box. Now, this first topic, these two topics aren't really super related, but they are related because I came across the concepts or whatever at the same time. Now, the first one, and it's strange. I went to a yard sale and came across some items, and so I grabbed them, and one of them is a piece of fabric, and it's a southwestern fabric, and it has like how you would see the old diagrams and symbols of the Thunderbird and whatnot. Now I could bring that up. We could do a deep dive into cave drawings, which is what I think we're going to do, which is why I kind of wanted to throw this out there. Again, you guys, if you followed the channel or the original channel, Buri and Jen, you know that this is something that's always circulating in the back of my mind. Now, I don't know if you call them uploads, downloads, talking to God, meditative revelations, different strokes for different folks. I don't personally care what words you use. Words do have power and truth does matter, but at the same time, names are kind of difficult and attaching labels to things, so I try not to do that here. Anyways, you'll know if you followed the channel at all that it's a topic that kind of circulates in the back of my mind, and it started with the spiral symbol and how that's not actually, I mean, it can be used for hypnotism or some type of mesmerism, symbology, but I believe in the cave drawings, it was symbolizing time, like a timeline. And that's how I kind of feel like time is a spiral, almost like a slinky, right? Like a deck of cards, like it compresses, maybe? I don't know what the right word is for that. Again, I'm not physics girl. Anyways, I was having one of these moments, just insight, and I've been having more of those recently. I don't know why. It's kind of why I've been a little more quiet. And then I try to, if I can translate them or what have you, I try to share those with you guys. So I was looking at this piece of fabric and I was thinking about these symbols that they use and how we are told that we are being shown giant beings, which I don't think is false, okay? But again, more than one thing can be true and oftentimes is true. Now, I know from my artistic experience and endeavors and research that when you see beings with eyes or face and hands, that usually means human or humanoid, right? Now, these things, whatever they are, they're not representing human beings. And they might not be organic beings at all. And that's what I want to talk to you about. This is going to be real quick before I show you something that I found in a book that I think might help us out. Now, if I'm still being a little loud, I apologize. My ear is giving me some problems, so I'm just trying to deal with it the best I can. And I did a whole lot yesterday, and I always push myself, and I end up paying for it. And personally, things are just, I'm Charlie Brown again lately. Everything's breaking, and things are going wrong, so research is kind of my solace. It's my escapism. But anyway, I was looking at these different pictures and thinking about the Thunderbirds and all these things and how we're told some of these things are giants, which I do believe is true for some of them. Not all of them. Like these things, they're not really representative of humanoids in particular, because they lack hands. They do have these eye-like things, but their limbs kind of disappear, right? And they don't really, and then I started seeing, like, are those horns? Are they supposed to be horns? Well, what if they aren't horns? What if in just this one instance, those things aren't horns? Although here I believe it is horns and a serpent in this biggest one in the background there. Sammy, you're so loud with your peanut butter. Come here, little girl. Let me close this window so you guys can not be bothered. I like to hear the birds, though. There we go. Come here, little girl. My small town is getting busier and I don't like it. I feel like I'm turning into a crotchety old person. I'm not trying to or anything. So, I don't think all of them are humans or humanoids. Now, you look at these things, they kind of look like horns, but could they be something else? So I'm trying to think about this, right? And I see like these big beings, right? You see that big thing in the middle? And on the right-hand side, you have the deer, the stag. And on the left-hand side, you have what looks like a human. Kind of like a puppet, but it looks like a human. But what is this big thing in between them? It kind of has patterns in the middle. Now, I'm going to ask you, if you've not seen the earlier videos on this channel, the shorter uploads, you should check them out. I was going to break this, and I still might break this apart and do a shorter video on this for anyone that misses it, because I do think it's a new insight, and I want to know what you guys think, so please comment. People used to comment in chat all the time. I don't know what happened to that, so I encourage you guys to comment and interact. And oh god, I never turned them on today. My bad. There you go. 7 minutes in, not bad. Okay, so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, man, it reminds me so much of something else. And then you have this one here. Now it does have hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of, right? But then you have this thing sticking out of its head. And you have this other thing. Yeah, you kind of see where I'm going with this? Now, I'm going to show you real quick. Check this out. What if they weren't drawing giants? What if they were warning us, much like the Hopi prophecy talks about, what if they were warning us about electrical towers? Now, if you think back to the video I did, or if you haven't seen it, go check it out, about towers and about how old stories used to talk about, old folklore used to talk about the devil trapping souls in towers. You have all the fairy tale stories about fairy princess, or, you know, not fairy princesses, but princesses being kidnapped or absconded, right? Trafficked and thrown into these towers. And then you have cell towers, and then you have these electrical towers, and you also have CPU, your PC towers, right? So what if some of these aren't people, like this one especially? Those aren't hands that you're seeing. It is somehow showing you either the human and the animal are being lifted up, or this thing is affecting humans and animals. Okay. Now, again, some of them are humanoids, right? Some of them I do believe represent deities, little g gods, right? I'm not going to disagree with that. But some of them, I believe, are electric towers. I want to show you one thing before we get into that. Because there's a couple in particular that I'm thinking of that are more popular, and that, you know, they show on like the History Channel and those types of shows. So let's see if I can see. Now that, like, that would be a giant humanoid type thing. You know, obviously some of them are. Now, I don't believe they're all cave drawings. I think, you know, we're dealing with a lot of fabrication and a lot of fraud in these times. That's another reason that technology can be used for nefarious purposes. Hello, good morning. Well, not good morning. Greetings and salutations. So I'm looking for one in particular. But again, you see we're told that these are giants, but I don't think they're all giants. I think that they were warning us, much like we've gone over and over in the different Hopi prophecies, that somehow these towers, let's see, are a danger to both man and the animal kingdom, right? Let's do Native American. Again, this isn't going to be too long. I'm going to jump into this book real quick because I want you guys to see a couple things that I found. And again, this town I live in, it's weird, man. That same area, I go over to that area and it gets weird. You get a weird, I don't even want to talk about it. But then some lady yesterday, an older woman neighbor, and of course she tells me a weird story and she starts talking about, I don't know if she was testing me to see if I remember if I remember, I don't know. I don't know, guys. My life is very strange. And people are very strange. Okay, so like this. Now it does have eyes and it has hand-looking things. And you've got the spiral there, right? So this is some type of god, I think, possibly of time or a serpent god, because the spiral could be a serpent as well. And of course you can't see it. Let me see if I do Thunderbird. Because usually these ones, I started looking at them. I'm like, what if those aren't wings? What if not all, not all of these are actual birds, but they're towers. Because the towers have arms and then they have like these patterns in the middle, right? And they're giant, right? And then you get to hear, and there's always these things like these staffs or something that are these discs that are like controlling things. See, that's a good one, but I don't know if that's legitimate. You see those, how they do the feathers, how they're just lines hanging down. And again, some of them are very clearly birds. Some of them are thunderbirds. But not all of them. I think some of the giant humanoid beings. Let's see what's in Wisconsin. Like that right there. There's another one that kind of looks like it. There's that's legitimately a bird. Of course, now when I'm looking with you guys on here, I can't find what I'm looking for. But you get the idea of what I'm speaking of. And again, this is the closest one. I'll keep looking for others. If you can find any, let me know. I have a couple in my head that I've seen. Again, I have like this eidetic memory when it comes to pictures and faces. I'll forget names sometimes of people. I mean, a lot. I forget names. But I don't forget things I see or things I read, which is why I don't read a book twice and all that. I'm not one of those. I can't sit and read the Bible over and over and over again. I can read verses and, different things. To me, some of those cave drawings, absolutely, because you see how the middle can almost look like a face too. And you can see how the top with those things hanging down looks like arms, right? So then you go back here to that. Like it just really, to me, and then you have the zigzag on the side, which literally could be like electricity, right? Lightning, right? I don't know. I don't think they're all giants. And I want to know what you guys think. And if you find more pictures, let me know. We will spend more time on that. We might do a whole video on it. But I want to get to this because I found something very interesting in this book. And again, you know about the place I live. And I've talked about it at length. And it's a very strange place. And I loved living here and I love the area itself. But everybody got very different a few years back. And I feel like, in a way, my life was purposely sabotaged just so I wouldn't notice things, and I was punished for noticing things with a lot of trauma. But it didn't have the effect that these people, these individuals wanted it to have. I started using it to my advantage. So let me get a sip of Gatorade here. And we will start. Now, you're probably wondering why I have this picture pulled up. Keep that in the back of your mind. We're going to go to this book. Now, I started looking into the person who wrote this because you always want to know your source and if they're credible. And they are into the occult, okay? The person who wrote this. Now, the back of it, I'll read what I have. In the book that I have, the cover is the thumbnail. My cover doesn't look like this. It's not modern. And I personally hate that cover. I don't like that at all. But it's called Psychic Self-Defense by Dion Fortune. Now, the back says, after finding herself the subject of a powerful psychic attack, Dion Fortune, and that's a pseudonym, wrote this detailed instruction manual for safeguarding yourself against paranormal malevolence, but not without some trepidation. As she says in the preface, it is hardly possible to give practical information on the methods of psychic defense without at the same time giving practical information on the methods of psychic attack. It is not without reasons that initiates have always guarded their secret science behind closed doors. It may well be that the time has come for plain speaking. Fortune explores the elusive psychic element in mental illness and, more importantly, details the methods, motives, and physical aspects of psychic attacks and how to overcome this energy. This revised edition of this New Age classic includes an index and an additional explanatory note for contemporary readers. Dion Fortune is one of the most celebrated teachers of the Western mystery tradition and the founder of the Society of Inner Light. Fortune died in 1946, leaving a legacy of her extensive research and work in occult fields in the form of a number of classic texts on the subject. Stronghold and pause and a warning. I know people are going to say, well, aren't you a Christian? Why are you reading us this book? Because it comes from the source itself. And again, what we're talking about here is intent. Inanimate objects or natural forces aren't really good or bad. They can be used and utilized in negative or positive ways, much like technology. We're obviously still not ready for it yet, and it probably all is going to be buried again like it was before because we do foolish things with it. And I'm just being real. I'm saying I'm a part of this. But I do utilize it now to try and reach others. And if just one person changes some of the things they do throughout the day, or one person becomes aware of the fact that there is more to this place than we have been told, then I think it's worth it. So another reason I am going to read you some of this information that comes from an occultist, I'm not going to read you all of it because very clearly, there's a bias here. Now, she calls herself a Christian New Age occultist, and I'm not even going to go there. Looking into her bio is a whole rabbit hole by itself. If you guys, again, I've always told you, authors, publishing houses, these things lead to deep rabbit holes. Much like we found out, which I was researching again last night, that all of these DNA testing companies, their CEOs are high-tech people. Like the ex-CEO of YouTube, Susan Wojcicki, I don't know, I'm butchering that, whatever her last name is. She is now the CEO of, I think it's 23andMe. It might be Ancestry.com. One of them. I think it's 23andMe. I forget. Anyways, all of these high-tech people have their hands in the genetic cookie jar, so to speak. So this stuff gets very deep. Now, what I find with the occultists is that they are very into psychology and psychotomy and human behavior. Why is this important? Because a lot of them got into the psychiatry industry. And if you're a TI, you know that if you are referred to one and you are a certain type of person, they will use that against you, and you will get on a list, and it's a whole, like, you could say I'm paranoid all you want, but the proof is out. Like, there's so many of us showing proof. So it's not a conspiracy theory. It's just a fact. It's factual information. And by denying it, you're not helping, you're being a part of the problem. And so I want to go to the source of some of this information so that we can understand how they are using our own minds against us, and we can defend ourselves. If you're aware of it, then you can, and I don't even want to say, because I'm a pacifist, right? I am. I'm not going to say I'm not. But we need to be proactive sometimes. We need to be on the offensive. If you're playing chess, you don't always want to be reacting or being on the defensive. You want to have an awareness, right? So I want to take this psychic self-defense and pick little bits of it apart and apply it to other things that we already know about. Some of the things that some of us are experiencing right now in this time. So I'm going to jump around just a little bit. How much time do I have? I don't want this to be super long. If you appreciate the content, though, do give it a thumbs up, because if you like it, I will do more readings of it, and I will do them in the morning and night, because I want it to kind of stay together. So, having said that, Psychic Self-Defense by Dion Fortune. I gave you the warning, all that. It's how you use the information. It is intention. It is not wickedness itself per se. Christ himself behaved in the ways of a lot of initiates. And I believe that's another reason that he was a target, is because he brought a lot of these things out into the surface. Sam, can you ease up on the peanut butter? Just take a rest now. I apologize. Okay, so here we go. First, let's go over the contents. You got the preface, part 1, types of psychic attack. Now, what we're going to look at today, I already have laid out, but we'll go over this so you guys can see what's in the book. Chapter 1, signs of psychic attack. 2, analysis of the nature of psychic attack. 3, a case of modern witchcraft. I can't see what you're writing. I apologize. Can I change? Hold on. Hold up. Fracture of last knowledge. Okay. When I do readings, it is hard to see if you guys comment a lot. But I hope you can see each other, because I know it's not laid out like this on the on your end. So go ahead and converse. I'm not gonna turn it off or anything. Signs of psychic attack. 2, analysis of the nature of psychic attack, because there are different types. And now remember, she's saying psychic attack, right? We know that it is a lot of what she's talking about. If it's an attack, it's witchcraft. Manipulating the mind of another is not allowed. Now, if you're open about something and you're trying to sway somebody to your opinion and you're doing an open debate, things like that, that's different. But being behind the scenes and using somebody's weaknesses or fears or confidence that they told you, things they told you in confidence, that is witchcraft. 3, a case of modern witchcraft. 4, projection projection of the etheric body. 5, vampirism, and it's not what you think. Hauntings, the pathology of non-human contacts, which is interesting. I briefly looked at a couple of these. 8, the risks incidental to ceremonial magic, meaning what I've talked about before, splashback. My mother introduced me to the occult at a rather pivotal age, as to where we started having poltergeist activity, which, if you know anything about that, that comes directly from a prepubescent or adolescent who is in the midst of puberty. And I'm being honest, that's, it was introduced to me at that time for a specific reason with a specific cause, because I seem to have some type of foresight. Now, I don't call it psychic. I'm very careful about that term. I know it's forbidden in the Old Testament. It's forbidden because in the ways that we're not supposed to be making money off of our gifts. We're supposed to be healing each other and helping each other and loving each other, right? Feeding each other, nourishing each other, and not at odds with each other. Anyways, 7, the pathology of non-human contact. 8, the risks incidental to ceremonial magic. So that is the consequences of going against natural law or harnessing the elements like earth, air, water, and fire. And again, I'm not in the occult. I've never been a part of, that I'm aware of, a coven or anything like that. I do believe these groups are around me. I do believe my mother was a part of something, possibly my father too. I have a really weird background. I am a Christ follower. I love Jesus. I always have, but I don't push that, or I don't preach or try to convert in the same way that others do, because I know that things come to us in our time. And I believe Christ, for example, he will go to an Asian person looking like an Asian person. He will go to an Indian person looking like an Indian. And so it's very possible different cultures are using different names for him. And I know that other people that are Catholic or Christian are going to, come at me. And then the New Age community says I'm not New Age enough. Christians say that, I am, not Christian enough. So you can't please everybody. I'm trying to equip you with knowledge. What you do with that is at your discretion. I presume everyone here is a rational, logical adult who can use reason first, and that's what we're doing. We're not going to look right to spirits, right? We're going to look to people and technology and even herbs and pharmakia and see how these things correlate and correspond and how they're coming together against unsuspecting people that they consider to be fools, which again, she shows her bias very, very clearly in one part of the book that I'm not even going to read. But there are bits in here that are helpful to us quite a bit. Part 2, differential diagnosis, distinction between objective psychic attack and subjective psychic disturbance. 10, non-occult dangers of the Black Lodge. 11, the psychic element and mental disturbance. We've all suspected this. We've talked about it at length. We know that people point to us and call us crazy, even though there's documents, federal documents, readily available on places like congress.gov that talk about surveillance, okay? It's a regular practice. It has been happening since we were small. Part 3, and these things, again, they work together. People who are into the occult, who Christians would call witches and sorcerers, they all got into pharmacy. They're pharmacy techs. They are doctors. They are nurses. They are phlebotomists who deal with blood, right? To have access to a variety of different blood types and specific people's blood types so that if they wanted to, they could have a really potent spell or mesmerism or something made up to use against that specific person because now they have that person's blood. And I'm just being honest, and I'm not saying every doctor, every nurse, every psychologist, but I am saying that these people got into those fields, the ones who are using it to hurt other people, they're using it to harm others, because one of the tenets of, like, for example, of Wicca is to harm none. First, harm none. Do no harm. And that is a part of the Hippocratic Oath that doctors used to take, but I believe we did a video on researching that one of you talked about, and that was removed from the Hippocratic Oath, to do no harm. So these people very sneakily got into these very specific institutions like psychology, like pharmacology, like phlebotomy, like firemen and policemen, because then they have access to your home. They have access to locksmiths. People say, oh, this was moved in my house, that was moved. What do you think's happening? This is bigger than people understand. We're not the type of society that we thought we were, and we're certainly not free. But if you utilize your free will properly, you can liberate yourself. And I talk about that at length in the consent videos. Methods employed in making a psychic attack so we can understand what they're doing and how and why. The motives of psychic attack, the motives of psychic attack 2. Part 4, methods of defense. Physical aspect of psychic attack and defense, diagnosis of the nature of an attack, because there are different types. Methods of defense 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the conclusion. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to jump around a little bit because I have parts in the book that I have right here that I've highlighted. So I'm going to go over the important bits, and then we're going to go forward to another part that, hold on, let me get there. Okay, there we go. I just wanted to get, okay, so where I had a few highlights, that way I can look at those and tell you guys, and highlight them in this digital copy as well. Lay down, Samson, good boy. That's my guy. All right, I'm going to have a sip of Gatorade. I hope you guys are having a good morning. Again, this won't be super long. I want it to be user-friendly. Thanks for the thumbs up. That's awesome. Hold, please. And I know people leave and they're like, oh my gosh, she's looking at occult information. Oh my gosh, she's fallen away. We just really got to stop with the judgments. I'm trying to help, right? If you expose the evil, and that's what we're called to do in the Great Commission, if you expose the evils that are occurring, and this is a big part of like natural law, I haven't figured out what it is yet, but when you declare like, hey, I know what you're doing out loud, or when you expose what somebody is doing like this, like what I'm doing publicly, they can't use that against you anymore. They have to go back to the drawing board and start the whole process over. I don't know why these beings, whatever it is we're dealing with, these individuals have to abide by certain principalities in their dominion. Each demon has a domain, right? And each domain, basically, like, for example, Ohio would be under that is the domain of a specific principality and its power, meaning principality of the angelic order, or whatever you want to say, angelic hierarchy, right? But angelic doesn't always mean quote unquote good, and we know this too. So it is with a sense of seriousness of the issues involved that I set myself to the task of writing a book on psychic attack and the best methods of defense against it. And again, this is an older book. It was written in like the 1930s, but there's so much of it that's relevant. They have not changed their modus operandus. The undertaking is beset with pitfalls. It is hardly possible to give practical information on the methods of psychic defense without, at the same time, giving practical information on the methods of psychic attack. Telepathy, right? Monitoring spirits. People think some people are out there, the TI is saying it's all technology. You have other people saying it's all spiritual. I say it's both. It's a spiritual energy that is utilizing technology. High tech sometimes are just hidden, unknown tech, and they are utilizing it against specific groups of people and specific individuals for nefarious purposes, much like the Whisper Room that Dean Koontz wrote about. I think he's a prophet. Like, there's no other way he could know these things. Or, as I've said before, is it possible we are scripting our own reality? Why did the Library of Alexandria burn down twice? What was in there that was affecting reality? Or was it secrets better off not known? Much like you see today, the some of the drawings and some of the stone etchings of the people figures from like the Sumerians. They have their hands up and it looks like they're holding something, but whatever it is has been removed. And it looks like it's the perfect spot for a cell phone. Sit down, and you two stop it right now. Sit down. You're not being very nice. Get along. Mama's knees hurt, and let me lay that there, please. To disclose sufficient to be adequate without disclosing sufficient to be dangerous is my problem, but wait. As so much has already been made known concerning the esoteric teaching, and as the circle of students of the occult is becoming rapidly wider every day, it may well be that the time has now come for plain speaking. The task is not of my seeking, but as it has come into my hands, I will do my best to discharge it honorably, making available knowledge which has come to me in the course of many years' experience of the strange byways of the mind, which the mystic shares with the lunatic. This knowledge has not been attained without cost, nor I suspect will the divulging of it altogether be free from cost either. Always count the cost of a thing you do in this life. Everything has a cost to it, a debt to be paid, right? Or an exchange of energy, except Love. That's why Christ said the only law is love, because you can do anything from love and you don't have to worry about some type of balancing or error correction needing to take place in natural law or the universe, so to speak. I don't know how else to say that right now in this conversation. Okay, I've endeavored to avoid as far as possible, which I like about this book, the use of secondhand material. We all know the person who has a friend whose friend saw the ghost with her own eyes. That is not of very much use to anybody. What we need is to have eyewitness under cross-examination. For this reason, I have not drawn upon the vast literature of the subject for illustrations of my thesis, but have preferred to rely upon cases that have come within the range of my own experience. So these are all first-hand accounts that are in the book. I think I may fairly claim to have practical and not merely theoretical qualifications for the task. My attention, and this again, she is part of the occult. I think she obviously was a member of some lodges. She was excommunicated from one. Again, it's a whole other rabbit hole to get into this person's history. My attention was first turned to psychology. As I said, the occultists always go to psychology, and many of them have become psychologists, and subsequently to occultism as the real key to psychology by the personal experience of a psychic attack, which left me with shattered health for a considerable period. Attacks on your spirit create holes in your armor. Fear creates a hole in your armor, and it can affect your physical body. Because of this, all things begin in the spirit. So if you are sick, it is because something is going on in your spirit or to your spirit, okay? Something you need to pay attention to and not do anymore, not partake in anymore, or certain people maybe you have to avoid in the future. Now, we know that basically a lot of this has to do with hypnotism. Some of it's passive, some of it is deep trance type stuff. Psychologists are very into this. I know that it was admitted to me that somebody, a loved one very close to me, did this to me without my knowledge and or consent. And then I have very good reason to believe it happened to me with this alleged counselor that I was seeing down the road, who wouldn't let me come back when I started catching on to things and I wanted another appointment to come and speak with him and his supervisor. That couldn't be done. Hypnotism is a big part of this, but not just hypnotism. There's something else to add to that. We've looked at the possibility of anesthesia being used in these quote-unquote alien abductions. I am not saying aliens aren't real. I'm not saying, I call them fallen angels myself, fallen watchers. Some of them are regular watchers, but the wicked ones are in league with people of convenient means in this world. Politically, sometimes just communally, like I said, policemen, firemen, counselors, okay, people who are going to work in government offices, you know, sometimes just lowly people that you might not notice, like, I don't know, clerks who work with files all day, right? This goes, they're very organized, and it's like uber organized because, again, the spirit behind this thing, the fallen ones, whatever they are, archons, whatever you want to call them, I don't care what you call them. Like, I don't personally care. They have to abide by certain legalities. Like, they know this, right? And once you know certain things, like, now that I'm telling you these things, you need to be more responsible. And that is the risk. That is the cost of knowledge, is once you know a thing, you are more responsible then, and more is required of you. But if you don't know these things, in this time, it could damage you, your family, your relationships, your faith, your health, because you're just not paying attention and because you're too trusting of the people around you. The wheat and the tares are right beside each other. I would not doubt if there is one wheat in every household and the rest are knowing and complicit tares at this point. But that's just a possibility. I don't use the word never anymore, and I would not recommend you do either, because our words have more power these days, it would appear, or at least I'm experiencing that. Maybe I broke into the passcode of this computerized realm, and that's a whole nother video that we'll get into later. It's not easy to get people to come forward and bear witness to psychic attacks because they know there's very likelihood of their being believed, little likelihood that they'll be believed, and they will more likely earn themselves a reputation for mental imbalance, right? So they know this. Secondly, because any tampering with the foundations of the personality is an experience of such peculiar and unique horror that the mind shrinks from the contemplation of it and one cannot talk about it. This is why people who have those abductions or alleged encounters with Bigfoot, they'll go years without talking about it. Number one, it can be part of an implanted thought. Number two, something happens to the mind through unwilling or non-consensual hypnosis. This lost time phenomena, I don't believe is altogether supernatural, although some people might call it, supernatural in the spirit. It is pharmakia, witchcraft, in the purest sense of the word, in herbology. And I'm going to show you that real quick, or in a moment. I am of the opinion that psychic attacks are far more common and generally realized even by occultists themselves. Certainly the general public has no conception at all of the sort of things that are done by people who have a knowledge of the powers of the human mind and set to work to exploit them. Now remember, this is from like 1930 something. This book was written. Okay? And she's admitting that these things are used, these tactics are used against the public. And she's one of them. But she's a good one, right? Like, she's revealing these things. She says she's, whatever. I'm convinced that this factor played a large part in the witch cult and was the real cause of the universal horror and detestation of the witch. These powers have always been known to students of occultism, but nowadays they are known and used by people who would be exceedingly surprised to find who are their fellow practitioners. Mrs. Eddy, the founder of the Christian Science, stumbled onto these methods empirically without ever acquiring any rational knowledge as to their modus operandi, meaning she accidentally discovered them, like I did just now, right? She endeavored to teach them in such a way that they could only be used for good and their power for evil should be concealed, but that she herself was well aware of their possibilities if abused is witnessed by the dread of what she called malicious animal magnetism, which shadowed her whole life. Magnetism is a big part of this too, and she talks about that. The methods of Christian Science, without its strict discipline and careful organization, were developed and exploited by the innumerable schools, sects of the New Thought movement, aka the New Age movement. So she is calling the New Age movement a negative thing, right? In many of the developments, the religious aspect was lost sight of, and they simply became a method of mental manipulation. Do you see that? And again, this is one of them. Used purely for personal ends, though not necessarily deliberately evil. So again, it's all about intention. These things exist. We can tap into nature's powers and harness it all we want. We do it every day for electricity, do we not? But there's a cost. And we've not been told that the cost. What is the cost? It's got to be huge. Because as much electricity as we all use, what's the cost for that, for harnessing that nature? What's going to happen because of that? Have you heard of the MCO, the possibility of an MCO? Some people think the next great disaster is going to be a plasma one. Okay? Their exponents advertised that they would teach the art of salesmanship, of making oneself popular and dominant in society, of attracting the opposite sex, of drawing to oneself money and success. The amazing number of these courses advertised shows their popularity. Okay? So now she's going over different ads that they see. Hypnotism. Would you possess that strange and mysterious power which charms and fascinates men and women? So these are ads that are in the backs of old magazines, pushing this and promoting this to the public, to the housewives, right? Who might get a little bored, whose children might grow, to the people of the spiritual movement of that time, with the seances and the knocking of the tables and the alleged etheric pictures of plasma beings. My old puppy, who is blind now, is barking, so I apologize. I have to come out here and set him free a little bit and let him wander around, because I guess that's what he wants to do now. Go ahead. No knocking into the walls, man. Go ahead. This is my life. I appreciate your patience. I do not have a studio. I'm just some woman in a house with my dogs in Northeast Ohio, trying to do my small part, whatever that means at this time. Okay, so where was I? I apologize. Now, these are a few specimens chosen from among the 63 similar ads. So those were ads in a single issue of a popular weekly magazine. Let us now consider what such advertisements, that's what they used to, how they pronounced it back then, as these signify from the point of view of the persons to whom they are not addressed, the persons over whom the reader is presumed to want to acquire power. What will be their position? Should he break his 10th commandment and covet his neighbor's wife or his ox or his ass or any of his other valuables? Supposing the diligent student of these methods wants something he ought not to have, supposing he is on the shady side of the law, or is nursing a sense of injury and desires to be revenged. Okay, so she goes on and gives reasons why this could be used for evil. Her own experience, painful though it is for someone, has got to be the first to come forward and uncover these abuses. Okay, so we're going to skip her life story right here. Again, there are a few things that I want to show you specifically. And this one goes on and on about a specific event, and it's not super helpful. So we're just going to skip over that a little bit. Actually, let's hear. Gradually, everything began to feel unreal. All I knew was, and now she's talking about her own, about being attacked, okay? And I do this for copyright reasons too, because I have to add commentary and I have to omit some of it. Otherwise, there is a risk of a copyright infringement. Although this person, it would be the publishing house or the estate, because this person is deceased. But I want to put that out there, that I do look into these things and I do understand how they work, even though I don't have the best tech devices. So she says, gradually everything began to feel unreal. All I knew is that I had to hold on at all costs to the integrity of my soul. Once I agreed to her suggestions, I was done for. We went on with our litany. I was getting near the end of my resources. I had a curious sensation as if my field of vision were narrowing. This, I believe, is a characteristic phenomena of hysteria. Out of the corners of my eyes, I could see 2 walls of darkness creeping up behind me. So she's having attacks, right? She's going off to college. She's having these attacks occur. She doesn't know what's happening, where it's coming from, or why. Okay? She says she ends up having an experience. She hears a voice in her head. She never knew who it was. She does not assign that to God, of course, which I find telling. So let's just briefly look over these real quick. Type 1, signs of a psychic attack. If we look at the universe around us, we cannot fail to realize that there must be some overruling plan coordinating its infinite complexity. If we take into our hands and examine minutely any living thing, however simple, equally must we realize that the ordered diversity of its parts is built up on a determining framework. Science has sought in vain for this organizing principle. It will never find it on the physical plane, for it is not physical. It is not inherent nature of atoms which causes them to arrange themselves in the complex patterns of living tissues. The driving forces of the universe, the framework upon which it is built up in all its parts, belong to another phase of manifestation than our physical plane, having other dimensions than the 3 to which we are habituated, and perceived by other modes of consciousness than those to which we are accustomed. Hold, please. We also briefly looked at the Book of Mormon, where they seem to imply that there is, where it seems to imply that there are other dimensions or parallel dimensions that sit on top of or right beside our own. We live in the midst of invisible forces whose effects alone we perceive. We move among invisible forms whose actions we very often do not perceive at all, though we may be profoundly affected by them. In this mind side of nature, invisible to our senses and tangible to our instruments of precision, many things can happen that are not without their echo on the physical plane. There are beings that live in this invisible world as fish live in the sea. There are men and women with trained minds or special aptitudes who can enter into this invisible world as a diver descends to the ocean bed. There are also times when, as happens to a land, when the sea dikes break, the invisible forces flow in upon us and swamp our lives. Normally, this does not occur. We are protected by our very incapacity to perceive these invisible forces, meaning the fact that the veil is here and we cannot see them. That is our protection. People who dip their fingers into this, that is, again, you got to count the cost. That is the cost. There is going to be some cost for piercing the veil, right? There are 4 conditions, however, in which the veil may be rent and we may meet the unseen. We may find ourselves in a place where these forces are concentrated. Okay, so that's one way. We may meet people who are handling these forces. That's another way you can be affected. 3, we may ourselves go out to meet the unseen, meaning you're dabbling yourselves, led by our interest in it, and get out of our depth before we know where we are. Or we may fall victim to certain pathological conditions which rend the veil. The threshold of the unseen is a treacherous coast on which to bathe. There are potholes and currents and quicksands. Okay? So we're going to bounce over here. We must face the fact, however, that men and women with knowledge of these things have both in the past and in the present used that knowledge unscrupulously, and that we may find ourselves involved in the results of their actions. It may safely be said that the unseen is only evil and inimical to humanity when it has been corrupted and perverted by the activities of these unscrupulous men and women, whom initiates call adepts of the left-hand path. Do you know why they call it the left-hand path? I had forgotten, but I was reading scripture the other day, and they call it the left-hand path because Judas sat on the left hand of Christ at the Last Supper. I thought that was interesting. Because he took the left-hand path, right? And the narrow way means there's only one way. Only one way, right? There are many ways to Hades. And there's only one. We must consider that outward, and Christ said the one law was love. So anything you do with love, you don't have to count the cost, usually. There is no law against it. Natural law will not bounce back at you, so to speak. We must consider the outward and visible signs of psychic attack before we are in a position to analyze the nature of such attacks. Okay, it is a fundamental rule that the diagnosis must precede the treatment, obviously. There are many different kinds of psychic attacks, and the methods that will dispose of one will be ineffectual against another. The commonest form of psychic attack is that which proceeds from the ignorant or malignant mind of our fellow human beings. Meaning, that we get hurt as a side effect because somebody just didn't know what they were doing, or we accidentally stumbled upon something, okay? Our persecutor may himself be a victim and has no idea that they're even being used against you, right? We've talked about that aspect of what's going on with people right now. Do they know that they're persecuting their own family members? Do they have any concept of the things they're saying and doing, right? Christ said himself, they know not what they do. How far does that go? How deep does that go? We should not accuse a man of malice if we had linked hands with him and he had stepped on a live rail. Meaning, don't blame the person if it's accidental. People also come in touch with unseen through the influence of places. Someone who is not actually psychic, but who is sufficiently sensitive to perceive the invisible forces subconsciously may go to a place where they are concentrated at a high tension. This is otherwise known as portals, possibly in the national parks. That's one concept or one branch of what's happening there. That's its own rabbit hole. We know that. Also, that area that I was just speaking of, where I live, where things get hazy for a minute or two, depending on the day, who's around, and what I've done that day. It may happen that the barrier between consciousness and subconsciousness indents in some people, and they are never able to clearly realize what is going on. They merely have the sense of oppression and general malaise, meaning you're fatigued, which lifts when they go away to another place. So sometimes that's how you're affected by a place. More commonly, however, if there is a definite psychic attack of sufficient force to make itself noticeable at all, there will soon begin to appear characteristic dreams. There may include a sense of weight upon the chest. What is that? Sleep paralysis. If you're experiencing sleep paralysis, either you opened a door or somebody else opened a door to specifically attack you. Okay, we've talked about sleep paralysis before and how some drugs can render a person paralyzed but absolutely aware of what's going on around them. You know, there are a few possibilities of what's going on here, and gets very nefarious. And this is why I'm trying to expose it, so that you can protect yourself. And people get mad, oh, you don't believe in aliens, or, how can you? Man, I'm called crazy because I believe in a God who created all of this and possibly created aliens too, but little green men and little gray men are okay. Where's the tolerance for our side? I just don't know anymore. And that's why, exposing this stuff is so key, so that, again, it's a spiritual warfare. You don't attack the person. You don't go after that person. You put your own psychic walls, your own religious walls, faith-based walls, whatever it is, scripture, whatever it is you do. I highly recommend Christ. He's the only way out. It worked for me. I've been proven time and again that the Bible seems to be coming true. But we do see that with other writings at this time. So, I don't think that the only truth in the whole world is the Bible. We still have time happening. You can't fit all of God and all of time into a book. It's just not possible, unless you're God himself. Then you have the book of life and all that, and that's different. Okay, so now they're saying, you might never actually realize what's going on, even. So first if you are being attacked, one way to know is that you have sleep paralysis, okay? And then we go this way. And they're talking about, like, materialism of entities and stuff right there. That gets a little weird. A sense of fear and oppression is very characteristic of a cult attack. Most of the TIs, they start out looking for answers in a very panicked, manic almost state of fear. I know this because I was there, and I realized that fear was their driving force. If they couldn't have me in a sense of fear, then I couldn't be unknowingly and unwittingly manipulated, right? So I knew that my fear had to go away immediately. And good thing for me, I'm a girl who always liked horror. I've seen pretty much every monster there is to see. None of that stuff, it just doesn't scare me. God's judgment that cannot be faked is the only thing that scares me. And I've had God's judgment upon me when all this stuff happened, because I had opened myself up to it, right? I had done things that I had never unburdened myself about to my creator, right? Because that's my belief, and maybe I was being held to that belief, or maybe it's true. I believe both. Which you'll find that's how I am. But again, I won't judge you. I'm not pushing my way. I'm just saying Christ and prayer and meditation and being in touch with nature is what really helped me. So it says a sense of fear. If you're being attacked, you will have this sense of oppression and fear, this heaviness over your life. It is extremely rare for an attack to make itself manifest out of the blue, out of nowhere. We are not in our normal state of mind, body, and circumstance, and then find ourselves suddenly in the midst of an invisible battle. An approaching occult influence casts its shadow on consciousness before it makes itself apparent to the non-psychic, right? The reason for this is that we perceive subconsciously before we realize consciously. Right, like the hair on your neck will stand up when you know you're being watched. You don't know that you're being watched yet. That comes after, right? Strange how our bodies work and how our spirits catch on to things quicker. But that should show people, that intuition, that gut feeling, that should show people that there's more to us than just a physical body. But however, our physical body is much more important than they want you to believe too. Or it wouldn't affect you when you eat the wrong things, right? It wouldn't affect your spirit. It wouldn't affect your spirit when you do drugs or all of these, substances, for example, right? Do you see what I mean? So let's keep going. The reason for this is that we perceive subconsciously before we perceive it consciously. As the attack progresses, nervous exhaustion becomes increasingly marked. Most TIs go through a period of where you just don't sleep. And these may, under certain conditions, which we will consider later, be such wasting of the tissues that the victim is reduced to a mere bloodless shell of skin and bones. That's not going to happen to any of us. We rebuke that thought. Again, we have to consider the source. This person isn't always, they want to sell books, right? But they're not always going to they're not going to give you the keys to the castle. They're not going to tell you the most important things. So sometimes what they're not saying is more important than what they're saying. So be aware of that. Such a case is an extreme example proceeding unchecked to its logical conclusion. Other issues are possible, however. The resistance may be good, in which case the attack is unable to gain a foothold on the physical plane and is limited to that borderland between matter and mind, which we perceive upon the threshold of sleep. A lot of abduction issues, alleged abductions, take place when you are asleep. No, and I try to go to all the Reddit boards and talk about this. There is no benevolent being in the world that will come to you when your defenses are down to your subconscious and manipulate that to get you to consent to certain. They do not go against your consent like that if it is benevolent. Only a malevolent force will do that. Now, God may, I'm not going to say never, right? It's God. God's going to do what God's going to do with his realm. But more times than not, that is something malevolent. Malevolent if it's coming to you and trying to supersede your free will, your agency, your option for choice. God gives us that, right? And people talk about suffering. You cannot have free will without the suffering part. And suffering is one thing that all humans, no matter what ethnic background, demographic you come from, or political party or religious affiliation that you come from, or what country or nationality you come from, all humans have that in common. We all can gather together over our suffering. And our suffering is actually what refines us. And I'm not saying it's good when it happens, right? It sucks and it's hard and it hurts and it, does all these things. And before I even knew what I was doing, I offered myself up and was like, God, just give me everything. Whatever it is that my family would get because of, just give it to me. Give me the consequences because I was involved too. And I don't want to see them go through what I'm going through. And it can be a lot, it can be a lot to carry on your shoulders. And most targeted individuals, most people who are facing persecution, true followers of free will, right? But at the same time, followers of life and love, and God is love, right? That slogan, love is love, you can't use a word to define itself. Love is placing that well-being of another before yourself, right? And so when you supersede that free will, there are going to be consequences. And these people are going to have to deal with consequences. That's why first they try to get you to sin. If you sin first, they have legal access to you. And they don't have to worry about the flashback. Don't sin, right? Stop it. Don't get drunk because they have... that's how they get me, is I'll go 6, 7, 8 months without drinking. And then I'll have a beer or two. Something that should not affect me in any way, considering I used to drink most men under the table. And depending on who's around, if I'm not watching my drink, it opens me up to dreams and demonic attack and just it almost immediately happens this day. God's telling me, hey, don't touch that. Don't touch it. They're on you, right? So you've got to be very careful. They do that. They try to push you off the cliff or into the ditch before they attack you, so they don't have to deal with any natural law consequences of what they're doing, because they know what they're doing is wrong. But if they get you to sin first, they have legal right then to enter that hole in your armor. I hope that makes sense, because that's really important that you guys understand that concept. And I know people hear the word sin and they're like, oh, I'm going to turn this off. I don't want to hear no preaching. It's not about that. Right? Don't even use the word sin. When you fall, when you transgress, when you make a mistake, right? When you are not vigilant, when you are not sober, when you are not kind, when you lie, when you steal, when you cheat, all of these things, they push you to do, usually they will try to push you towards your preferred method of sin because it's the easiest and the quickest route. So they just try to get you to do what you've done before. That way they can have access to you again. And again, you don't have to believe me, but this is happening on a massive scale everywhere to a lot of people. Go on Reddit, check it out. Some of you don't talk and you won't comment. You won't tell me your story because you're worried about the consequences of what will happen. Exposing this stuff is one of the ways you get it to stop. Because once you expose them for what they're doing, once you know, then they have to go to something else. I don't know what it is about that. I'm not sure exactly how that operates, like in behind the scenes. I just know that if you expose it, it stops, or at least it pushes it back from you. Hold, please. All right, so I don't want this to be much longer. I'm going to jump now to something else. And let me see what chapter it's in real quick. Methods employed in making a psychic tech. I already bookmarked it, so I want to show you, hopefully. Did I bookmark it? Hold, please. Methods. Yes. There we go. Okay, so we're jumping to this part because it greatly affects or greatly correlates with alien abduction experiences and or experiences with other beings. Yeah, drinking is a bad thing. I shouldn't even have had the 2 beers that I had, 2 or 3. It was a hot day. I had ate something. I felt good. I didn't feel like anything was wrong with me. And then I got to this one part of town where things just always get weird, and I need to be more careful. I need to be more vigilant. I just can't touch it at all, I guess. Something is going on. But anyways, let's move on. Methods employed in making a psychic attack. You need to see this because it has something to do with the alien abduction and or dream encounters, experiences, whatever you want to call it. I talked about one of the possibilities in quote-unquote alleged alien abductions and sleep paralysis being the use of anesthetic. And we went over that ad nauseum. I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice in any way, shape, or form. All the disclaimers are in the description box. We've done research, right? And before you go to the supernatural and jump to the supernatural, first you need to eliminate logically and reasonably the physical sources, right? However, I only do that to satisfy the scientist in me and in you guys. We should all be scientists, like true scientists, testing our hypotheses. And if it cannot be observed or repeated, then it's got to go. On the other end of things, though, I know things are spirit driven, so I try to debunk everything else, or say, hey, this is the methodology, this is the physical plane, what's happening, and it's being driven by this. This is why when some people, I got a message by somebody on Reddit who wanted help, and I said, well, I have to know more about your story, because if I don't know when this began for you, I can't point to the source. And if you don't know the source of it, all you're going to do is be putting band-aids on the problem, patching the holes up in the boat, and you can still sink, right? So you need to get to the source of what's causing these things in your life. If you want to email me, you want to talk privately, if you want me to share your story anonymously, I do that as well. I stopped reading my emails for a long time. Again, people always want to push this fear upon me or push specific scenarios and stories on me. I'm not sure what's up with that, so I'm very careful about who I talk to. But at the same time, I don't totally shut down the lines of communication, because if I can help somebody or God, if people just need fellowship, it's good it's still good to connect, right? All right, so methods. Anyone who reads the old books of witchcraft, usually compiled by the professional witch finders from the confessions of alleged witches extorted under torture, will find that the phenomena described fall into certain broad categories which are so constant in different ages and in different parts of the world that we are left with the impression that there must be some fire behind so much smoke, meaning that there must be something to all these witchcraft things. And I thought this was a good intro into the witch trial thing that I wanted to look at, because we're still going to look at the cast of characters in that, but I have a different idea of how things went down, and I want you guys to hear it, because again, looking at things from a different angle or perspective can sometimes open up the whole horizon for you, and you're able to look above from a situation and see how it's operating completely, and then you can decide if you want to be a part of it or not. That's how God looks down upon us. He's outside of time. He's outside of all this stuff. So he can look down, and it's like, a giant board game, everything happening all at the same time, because there is no time for him. Anyways, the state records of witch trials in Scotland, the reports of a priest charged with the task of extirpating witchcraft in northern Italy, the archives of Brittany, the stories of magic in classical literature, and finally, travelers' accounts of practices of primitive people all over the world all corroborate each other, agreeing as to the phenomenon described, the explanations given by witches of their methods, and the broad divisions into which the phenomenon fall. Check this out. I'm going to end this after we go over this. This is big. Anyone who has ever had lost time, listen to this. Or you feel like somebody took advantage of you or put something in your drink, or your memories aren't quite right. Check this out. I didn't know this was a thing. I had no idea it existed. Again, I'm always led to just the right places and just the right information. And I don't know if somebody in town's helping me and just doesn't want to present themselves. If it's my guardian angel, I just don't know. But I've had some weird, strange moments. So, we must first take account of the use of drugs, of which the black fraternity in all ages have possessed a remarkable knowledge. If we consider that these the cutting of roots, basically. What does that mean? It means using the plant, right? The herbs, the seeds, the flower, for specific purposes, for tinctures. If we consider the fact that fallen angels taught their women how to do this, then we have to consider the fact that pharmacia, pharmacist techs, all these people fall under this group, or would have access to this substance. And I've seen them, I think, and we've talked about it, but I'll get there in a minute. Potions, unguents, and fumigations were used extensively, and among all the weird and wonderful ingredients of which they were composed, we now and again find substances which are known to be medically potent. I smoke. Oh, man. Okay. Again, I don't... What you do is what you do. The poppy, which gives sleep and dreams. Hemp, which gives visions. Datura, check this out, which products loss of memory. Blighted grains, which produce... Oh, we'll just look at that one right now. Datura, which produces loss of memory. So what if you really knew what you were doing? Could you use this against somebody and then hypnotize them to implant a memory over top of the one you removed? So maybe that it felt or looked real at first, if that person didn't dig too deep into their subconscious, they would never know. Something like that. And that's what she was talking in the beginning of this book, is that these things greatly affect the mind when something like this is used on a person or against a person. Like we call them today, roofies. The date, drug. It's very similar in theory. So let's check this out, and then this video will be over. And if you guys want to read more about this, you got to let me know. If you want to do more into the cave drawings, please comment. Let me know. I'll do a poll on the community page too. So what is this stuff? The Datura plant, and I think I have them all over here. And they're not supposed to be here, but I think they are. It's a genus of 9 species of highly poisonous vespertine flowering plants belonging to the nightshade family. They are commonly known as thorn apples or Jimsonweeds. On my walk and talks, I told you guys, because they look like to me those little Rona germs that they were drawing in the beginning with the spikes. That's what these things look like laying on the ground. And I'm like, why are there so many of them? They're everywhere. And I've talked about it in my videos. Jimsonweeds, but are also known as devil's trumpets. Other English common names include moonflower, devil's weed, and hell's bells. Medicine. It can be used to treat stomach and intestinal pain that result from worm infestation. That's interesting, because there's a lot of talk of worms and parasites, and we've talked about Satan being called a parasite in the book of Essenes. Again, all of this stuff is connected. It is all being revealed. Apocalypse. The book of Apocalypse, the John's Apocalypse, was changed to Revelation. It means the same thing. Apocalypse doesn't mean war, guys. Apocalypse means a great revealing, like a lifting of the veil. Armageddon means war, but apocalypse just means a revealing. And there's a lot being revealed in this time. And there's a lot of people being exposed. Are they all wicked? I don't think so. I think a lot of what we're seeing is persecution. And I don't think they show the biggest, most important real things on these TV screens. We know from our own experience. What's black is white. What's white is black. What's up is down. What's down is up. They're rewriting what's happening now in the history books as something that it's not. And we know this because we're living it. Okay. Used externally to treat sports injuries. Okay. What are the effects? The chemicals found in most Datura species can cause uncomfortable side effects, hallucinations, unusual behavior, mood disorders, and overdose. So if somebody wanted to make you look crazy, just real quick so you could have a psychotic break, maybe to get you committed, we've talked about that. Toxicity. They are extremely poisonous, psychoactive, especially their seeds and flowers, which can cause respiratory depression, arrhythmia. Let's see. Now, I didn't know what this was. I was kind of gobsmacked yesterday when I found it. Now, this tells you the pharmacological properties of it, which I had looked at. But I wanted to try and... Again, the Native American Indians, they're the ones we should be going to right now. They're the ones we should be talking to. The Aztecs used Datura as a painkiller in initiation rituals and as a narcotic for ritual sacrifices. It was used to relieve the pain of rheumatism and earaches. That's funny. Religious visionary purposes throughout the world and used by witchcraft in medieval Europe. The god Lord Shiva, Hinduism again, was known to smoke cannabis and datura. So here again, it's every faith system, every religion, except for Christianity, has some, like they're all linked in some way almost, right? I wonder why. Is that because of how they were created, or... Throughout history, there have been stories about the plant being used to make poison, witch's brews, or love potion. Due to its toxicity and the shape of the flower, they were granted the common name, the devil's trumpet. In some religions and cultures, datura symbolizes a powerful and dangerous plant. They're also called Jimsonweed. Okay, so you can look that up and see if you have any Jimsonweed in your area. They feared its narcotic effects and avoided it except in certain ceremonial capacities. These included its utilization as an aid in locating thieves and lost or stolen property, for diagnostic and curative purposes, and for revenging unrequited advances. Okay. It was known to be a hallucinogenic and an intoxicant. Datura as memory... Oops, sorry. Thank you for your patience, guys. Now, these are the things in the plant that creates, mess with your memory. Scopolamine, an alkaloid of datura, and an, acetylcholine receptor antagonist, has been reported to impair cognitive performances, especially spatial learning and memory, as well as vigilance. I find that interesting because the Bible tells us to be sober and vigilant, and this inhibits your vigilance. Imagine that. Now, it's not telling you any... Let's see. There we go. My puppy is barking again. I'm going to have to go let him out. So I'm going to end that here for now. We can look into more of that if you'd like. But if you want to read more of this book, if you want to talk more about the cave drawings, please do let me know. The Datura aspect Very pertinent. If you have not seen the video that we did on alien abductions, it has a picture. The thumbnail is of like little gray men or whatever in somebody's bedroom. If you haven't watched that, you might want to check that out, because we talk about the possibility of anesthesia being used. Also in the other live stream we did about Mormonism and the Men in Black, and how all these different FBI, CIA, how all these different people wear the same costume and are same, could be part of the alien abduction thing. We talked about that aspect too, and about how people in the medical field would have to be involved. So let me know what you guys think. You guys have a blessed and great day, and we'll talk soon. Bye.